Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming together to immerse ourselves in this rich body of wisdom we call Torah. We're going to read through this week's Torah portion, Miketz, which is in the book of Genesis, beginning with chapter 41. And we'll read through the English translation of our portion. I'll share with you a focused study about it, and then we'll open it up for our collective collaborative conversation about it. If you'd like to go ahead and join me in reciting the blessing that gives thanks for this moment, feel free to do so. Baruch atah Adonai
Adonai,
Eloheinu
Eloheinu melech
melech haolam
haolam,
asher
asher kitshanu
kitshanu
b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu
tivanu la'asot
la'asok b'divrei
b'divrei Torah.
Torah.
Amen.
The opportunity to immerse ourselves in words and deed and relationships of Torah. I'll share with you the opening verses, and then I'll invite others to have an opportunity to read as well. Once again, we're in the book of Genesis, chapter 41, beginning with verse 1. After 2 years' time, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing by the Nile. When out of the Nile there came up 7 cows, handsome and sturdy, and they grazed in the reed grass. But presently 7 other cows came up from the Nile close behind them, ugly and gaunt, and stood beside the cows on the bank of the Nile. And the ugly, gaunt cows ate up the 7 handsome, sturdy cows, and Pharaoh awoke. He fell asleep and dreamed a second time. 7 ears of grain, solid and healthy, grew on a single stalk. But close behind them sprouted 7 ears, thin and scorched by the east wind. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 solid and full ears. Then Pharaoh awoke. It was a dream. Next morning, his spirit was agitated, and he sent for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men. And Pharaoh told them his dreams, but none could interpret them for Pharaoh. Margot, we're at the verse 8 of our portion there. If you'd like to unmute and read for us a little bit. Yeah, you'll need to unmute.
Better?
Yes.
Better? Good. I'm eager to read. The chief cupbearer then spoke up and said to Pharaoh, I must make mention today of my offenses. Once Pharaoh was angry with his servant and placed me in the custody in the home of the chief steward, together with together with the chief baker. We had dreams the same night, he and I, each of us a dream with meaning of its own. A Hebrew youth was there with us, a servant of the chief steward. And when we told him our dreams, he interpreted them for us, telling each of the meanings of his dreams. And as he interpreted it for us, so it came to pass. I was restored to my post, and the other was impaled. Thereupon, Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was rushed from the dungeon. He had his hair cut, changed his clothes, and appeared before Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, but no one can interpret it. Now I have heard it said that you for you to hear the dream, to tell its meanings. Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, Not I. God will see to Pharaoh's welfare. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, In my dreams, I was standing on the bank of the Nile, and when out of the Nile came 7 sturdy, well-formed cows, and grazed in the red grass. Presently, there followed them 7 other cows, scrawny, ill-formed, and emaciated. I had never seen the likes for ugliness in all the land of Egypt. And the 7 lean and ugly cows ate up the first 7 cows, the sturdy ones. But when they had consumed them, one could not tell that they had been consumed. And then they looked just as bad as before. And I awoke in my other dream. I saw 7 ears of grain, full and healthy, growing on a single stalk, but right behind them sprouted 7 ears of shriveled, thin, and scorched by the east wind. And the thin ears swallowed the 7 east wind. And I have told my magicians, but none has an explanation for me.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you so much. Richard, we're at verse 25, if you'd like to read a little bit.
Thank you, Rabbi. And Joseph said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's dreams are one and the same. God has told Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 healthy cows are 7 years, and the 7 healthy ears are 7 years. It is the same dream. The 7 lean and ugly cows that followed are 7 years, as are the 7 empty ears scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine. It is just as I have told Pharaoh. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. Immediately ahead are 7 years of great abundance in all the land of Egypt. After them will come 7 years of famine, and all of the abundance of the land of Egypt will be forgotten, as the land is ravaged by famine. No trace of the abundance will be left in the land because of the famine. Therefore, for it will be very severe. Thereafter, it will be very severe. As for Pharaoh having had the same dreams twice, it means that the matter has been determined by God, and that God will soon carry it out. Accordingly, let Pharaoh find a man of discernment and wisdom, and set him over the land of Egypt. And let Pharaoh take steps to appoint overseers for the land, and organize the land of Egypt in the 7 years of plenty. Let all the food of these good years that are coming be gathered, and let the grain be collected under Pharaoh's authority as food to be stored in the cities. Let that food be reserved for the land for 7 years of famine, which will come upon the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish in the famine.
Thank you, Richard. Catherine, we're at verse 37, if you'd like to read a little bit.
Thank you, Rabbi. The plan pleased Pharaoh and all his courtiers. And Pharaoh said to his courtiers, Could we find another like him, a man in whom is the Spirit of God? So Pharaoh said to Joseph, Since God has made all this known to you, there is none so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my court, and by your command shall all my people be directed. Only with respect to the throne shall I be superior to you. Pharaoh further said to Joseph, See, I put you in charge of all the land of Egypt. And removing his signet ring from his hand, Pharaoh put it on Joseph's hand, and he had him dressed in robes of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. He had him ride in the chariot of his second in command, and they cried before him, Abrek. Thus he placed him over all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, yet without you no one shall lift up hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh then gave Joseph the name Zaphenath-Paneah, and he gave him for a wife Asenath, daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. Thus Joseph emerged in charge of the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Leaving Pharaoh's presence, Joseph traveled through all the land of Egypt.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Dave, we're now at verse 47, if you'd like to read a little bit.
Oh, very well. During the 7 years of plenty, the land produced in abundance. And he gathered all the grain of the 7 years that the land of Egypt was enjoying, and stored the grain in the cities, and he put in each city the grain in the fields around it. So Joseph collected produce in very large quantities, like the sands of the sea, until he ceased to measure it, for it could not be measured. Before the years of the famine came, Joseph became the father of two sons, whom Arsenoth, daughter of Potiphar the priest of On, bore to him. Joseph named the firstborn Manasseh, meaning God has made me forget completely my hardship and my parental home. And the second he named Ephraim, meaning God has made me fertile in the land of my affliction. In the 7 years of abundance that the land of Egypt enjoyed came to an end, and the 7 years of famine set in, just as Joseph had foretold. There was famine in all the lands, but throughout the land of Egypt there was bread. And when the land of Egypt felt hungry, the people cried out to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph, whatever he tells you, you shall do." Accordingly, when the famine became severe in the land of Egypt, Joseph laid open all that was within and rationed out grain to the Egyptians. The famine, however, spread over the whole world. So all the world came to Joseph in Egypt to procure rations, for the famine had become severe throughout the world.
Thank you, Dave. Robert, we're at the very start of chapter 42, if you'd like to read a little bit.
Yes, thank you. Now when Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt, Jacob said unto his sons, Why do ye look upon another? And he said, Behold, I have heard that there is corn in Egypt. Get you down thither, and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die. And Joseph's 10 brethren went down to buy corn in Egypt. But Benjamin, Joseph's brother, Jacob sent not with his brethren, for he said, Lest peradventure mischief befall him. And the sons of Israel came to buy corn among those that came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. And Joseph was the governor over the land, and he it was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth. And Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them, but made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them. And he said unto them, Whence come ye? And they said, From the land of Canaan to buy food. And Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew him not. And Joseph remembered the dreams which he dreamed of them, and said unto them, Ye are spies, to see the nakedness of the land ye are come. And they said unto him, Nay, my lord, but to buy food are thy servants come. We are all one man's sons. We are true men. Thy servants are no spies. And he said unto them, Nay, but to see the nakedness of the land ye come. And they said, Thy servants are 12 brethren, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is not. And Joseph said unto them, This is that I spake unto you, saying, Ye are spies. Hereby ye shall be proved. By the life of Pharaoh, ye shall not go forth hence, except your youngest brother come hither. Send one of you, and let him fetch your brother, and ye shall be kept in prison, that your words may be proved, whether there be any truth in you, or else by the life of Pharaoh, surely ye are spies. And he put them all together into ward 3 days. And Joseph said unto them the 3rd day, This do, and live, for I fear God. If ye be true men, let one of your brethren be bound in the house of your prison, Go ye, carry corn for the famine of your houses, but bring your youngest brother unto me. So shall your words be verified, and ye shall not die. And they did so.
Robert, thank you so much. I'm going to invite Mark, if you'd like to take over there. We're just finishing up verse 20, and then we're going to start with 21.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I have a very small Tanakh here, and I'm trying to find the numbers.
The words are at the end of 20, and they did accordingly, and then verse 21.
You know what? You better skip me until I catch up. I can't find it. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Jay, would you like to read a little bit where you see where we are?
We are at verse, what, 20? What verse are we at?
Yes, we're ending the last sentence in verse 20, and they did accordingly, and then continuing with verse 21.
Oh, thank you, Rabbi. They said to one another, alas, we are being punished on account of our brother because we looked on at his anguish, yet paid no heed as he pleaded with us. That is why the distress has come upon us. Then Reuben spoke up and said to them, did I not tell you? Do no wrong to the boy, but you paid no heed. Now comes the reckoning for his blood. They did not know that Joseph understood, for there was an interpreter between him and them. He turned away from them and wept. But he came back to them and spoke to them, and he took Shimon from among them and had him bound before their eyes. Then Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, return each one's money to his sack, and give them provisions for the journey. And this was done for them. So they loaded their asses with the rations and departed from there. As one of them was opening his sack to give feed to his ass at the night encampment, he saw his money there at the mouth of his bag. And he said to his brothers, my money has been returned. It is here in my bag. Their hearts sank, and trembling, they turned to one another, saying, what is this that God has done to us? When they came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had befallen them, saying, the man who is Lord of the land spoke harshly to us and accused us of spying on the land. We said to him, we are honest men. We have never been spies. There were 12 of us brothers, sons by the same father, but there is no more, and the youngest is now with our father in the land of Canaan. But the man who is Lord of the land said to us, by this I shall know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me and take something from your starving households and be off. And bring your youngest brother to me, that I may know that you are not spies, but honest men. I will then restore your brother to you, and you shall be free to move about in the land. Continue. As they were emptying their sacks, there in each one's sack was his money bag. When they and their father saw the money bags, they were dismayed. Their father Jacob said to them, it is always me that you bereave. Joseph is no more, and Shimon is no more, and now you would take away Benjamin. These things always happen to me. Then Reuben said to his father, you may kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my care, and I will return him to you. But he said, my son must not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he alone is left. If he meets with disaster on the journey you are taking, you will send my white head down to Sheol in grief.
Thank you so much. Rose, we're at the very start of chapter 43, if you'd like to read a bit.
On mute, okay. Okay, but the famine in the land was severe. And when they had eaten up the rations which they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, go again and procure some food for us. But Judah said to him, the man warned us, do not let me see your face unless your brother is with you. If you will let our brother go with us, we will go down and procure food for you. But if you will not let him go, we will not go down. For that man said to us, do not let me see your face unless your brother is with you. And Israel said, why did you serve me so ill as to tell the man that you had another brother? They replied, "But the man kept asking us about our family, saying, 'Is your father still living? Have you another brother?' And we answered him accordingly. How would we know that he would say, 'Bring your brother here'?" Then Judah said to his father Israel, "Send the boy in my care, and let us be on our way, that we may live and die, you and we and our children. I myself will be surety for him. You may hold me responsible. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, I shall stand guilty before you forever. For we could have been there and back twice if we had not dawdled." Then their father Israel said to them, "If this must be so, do this. Take some of the choice products of the land in your baggage and carry them down as a gift for the man, some balm and some honey, gum, ladanum, pistachio nuts, and almonds. And take with you double the money, carrying back with you the money that was replaced in the mouths of your bags. Perhaps it was a mistake. Take your brother too and go back at once to the man. And may El Shaddai dispose the man to mercy toward you, that he may release to you your brother as well as Benjamin. As for me, if I am to be bereaved, I shall be bereaved."
Oh, thank you, Rose. And then Justin and Linda, would you like to read a little bit? We're at verse 15 in chapter 43.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you. Go ahead.
So the men took this gift, and they took double the money in their hands, and Benjamin, and they got up and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the overseer of his house, "Bring the men into the house and give orders to slaughter an animal and to prepare, for the men will eat with me at lunch." And the man did as Joseph had said, and the man brought the men into Joseph's house. Now, the men were frightened because they had been brought into Joseph's house, and they said, "On account of the money that came back in our sacks at first, we are brought to roll upon us and to fall upon us and to take us as slaves, and our donkeys as well." So they drew near to the man who was over Joseph's house, and they spoke to him at the entrance of the house, and they said, "Please, my lord, we came down at first to purchase food, and it came to pass when we came to the lodging place that we opened our sacks, and behold, each man's money was in the mouth of his sack, our money in full weight, and we returned it in our hands. And we brought down other money in our hands to purchase food. We do not know who put our money into our sacks." And he said, "Peace to you. Fear not. Your God and the God of your father gave you a treasure in your sacks. Your money came to me." And he brought Simeon out to them.
Then the men brought the men, or the brothers, into Joseph's house, and he gave them water. And he washed their feet, and he gave fodder to their donkeys. And they prepared the gift until Joseph would come at lunchtime, for they heard that they would eat bread. And Joseph came home, and they brought him the gift that was in their hands into the house, and they prostrated themselves to the ground. He inquired after their welfare, and he said to them, "Is your elderly father, whom you mentioned, well? Is he still alive?" And they said to him, "Your servant, our father, is well. He is still alive." And they bowed and prostrated themselves. And he lifted his eyes and saw Benjamin, his brother, the son of his mother, and he said, "Is this your little brother whom you told me about?" And he said, "May God favor you, my son." And Joseph hastened, for his mercy was stirred toward his brother, and he wanted to weep. So he went into the room and wept there. And he washed his face and came out, and he restrained himself and said, "Serve the food." And they set for him separately, and for them separately, and for the Egyptians who ate with him separately, because the Egyptians could not eat food with the Hebrews, because it is an abomination to the Egyptians. They sat before him, the firstborn according to his age, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked at each other in astonishment. And he had portions brought to them from before him. And Benjamin's portion was 5 times as large as the portions of any of them. And they drank and became intoxicated with him.
Thank you so much. Deborah, would you like to read a little bit? We're at the very start of chapter 44.
Yes, thank you. Then he instructed his house steward as follows: fill the men's bags with food, as much as they can carry, and put each one's money in the mouth of his bag. Put my silver goblet in the mouth of the bag of the youngest one, together with his money for the rations. And he did as Joseph told him. With the first light of morning, the men were sent off with their pack animals. They had just left the city and had not gone far when Yosef said to his steward, "Up, go after the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, 'Why did you repay good with evil?' It is the very one from which my master drinks and which he uses for divination. It was a wicked thing for you to do." He overtook them and spoke those words to them. And they said to him, "Why does my Lord say such things? Far be it from your servants to do anything of the kind. Here we brought back to you from the land of Canaan the money that we found in the mouths of our bags. How then could we have stolen any silver or gold from your master's house? Whichever of your servants it is found with shall die. The rest of us, moreover, shall become slaves to my Lord." He replied, "Although what you are proposing is right, only the one with whom it is found shall be my slave, but the rest of you shall go free." So each one hastened to lower his bag to the ground, and each one opened his bag. He searched, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest. And the goblet turned up in Benjamin's bag. At this, they rent their clothes. Each reloaded his pack animal, and they returned to the city. When Judah and his brothers re-entered the house of Yosef, who was still there, they threw themselves on the ground before him. Yosef said to them, "What is this deed that you have done? Do you not know that a man like me practices divination?" Judah replied, "What can we say to my Lord? How can we plead? How can we prove our innocence? God has uncovered the crime of your servants. Here we are then, slaves of my Lord, the rest of us as much as he in whose possession the goblet was found." But he replied, "Far be it from me to act thus. Only he in whose possession the goblet was found shall be my slave. The rest of you go back in peace to your father."
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. That's our portion for the week. I'd like to share with you a bit of study about it. If you have a copy of the study sheet, I invite you to take it out. This year, as I was reading this week's Torah portion, I just stayed hovering over the very first word, the word that gives the name for this week's Torah portion, Miketz. And I just was fascinated with the word, and I wondered about that word, and I looked into that word, and I realized that the word that, at least in my Torah portion, gets translated as after, is from the Hebrew verb katsatz, which means to cut off. And so it is a word, miketz, that is used in the Bible as meaning after, at the end of a certain time. But I pondered the very root meaning of the word katsatz, from which this word miketz is constructed. And its literal meaning is to cut into pieces. And as I thought about that, I thought about how this introduction to this very dramatic piece of the story, which is going to continue next week, this word miketz points us to the violent history that Joseph and his brothers are caught up in. That Joseph was torn from his family. He was thrown into a pit. His garment was torn off of him by his brothers. They shredded it. They killed a lamb and had the tunic dipped in its blood, and then they presented it after they had sold their brother Joseph into slavery. They brought that shredded, bloodied garment to their father Jacob and said, "Do you recognize this?" And he wails, and what happened? And he says, "A wild animal killed our brother." And Jacob says, "My son Joseph has been shredded and torn." So this word miketz is evocative of all that traumatic, violent history that is borne by this family and by these brothers in particular. And so we get into the opening of this, and the verses that shortly begin the story says that when Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, and he made himself strange to them. And the word that is translated as he recognized, and the word that is translated as he made himself strange, are from the same root word in Hebrew, anachar. It means both to recognize, and it means to make oneself unrecognizable. So there is something fascinating, this dynamic that is going on here, that there's some kind of connection between this to see and to cause oneself not to be seen, to recognize and to cause oneself not to be recognized. So this dynamic that Joseph is somehow making himself strange opens up a couple of different options for us to explore about what is really happening here. So one line of understanding is that Joseph knows clearly who these people are. He knows exactly what they've done to him. He knows why they're there, and he doesn't trust them. And now he's going to disguise himself so that he can work out some kind of very clever strategy that is either going to test them to see if they are still the kind of deceptive, violent people that he remembers, or whether they have transformed themselves. So that's one line of thinking. But there's another line of thinking that intrigued me, which is that Joseph is experiencing some kind of self-disturbance, self-distortion of who he is because of what he sees before him. We then get to this notion in the same immediate encounter. The Hebrew says, "Vayedaber itam kashot." He spoke to them kashot. So the word kashot is based upon the Hebrew word meaning
Difficult.
difficult, yes. And so
Hard.
my translation says he spoke to them harshly. But there's another understanding of that I am intrigued by, which is that it doesn't just mean harsh, it means difficult. And we'll see that come up in a few weeks' time when we encounter the story of Moses. And there's that moment when Yitro says to Moses, I'm witnessing all these matters being brought for you for your judgment. And it says, V'davar hakashet, the difficult matters they would bring to Moses. So the really tough things, the things that require some kind of investigation, some kind of deep exploration, are the matters that get brought to Moses. And it's the same word that is being used here, this word kasher, kashot. So another way to think about it is this. When one studies the commentaries of the medieval commentator Rashi, there is a kind of traditional phrase that is associated with the study of Rashi, which is Makashela Rashi. What is so difficult for Rashi? What is it in the text that is causing Rashi to stop his forward progress in reading? It causes him to pause over this particular text, wonder about it, see some kind of difficulty in the text that goes beyond the surface meaning of what's going on, and he wants to probe into it and explore it. So that evoked for me that level of what this word kasher means, that there is a quandary. There's something happening right before me, and I could just accept in a literal surface understanding of what's happening, but maybe I'm going to go deeper. And so we can use this notion of kasher to read that what really is happening here with Joseph is that he's looking at his brothers before him and he's pondering. There's something disturbing to him about the brothers as he's seeing them. There's something that has begun to stir within him that says there's something more than what meets the eye that's happening here. And so he becomes provoked by it. He becomes full of questions and quandary, and he wants to dig into this and see what it is that's happening with the brothers and perhaps with himself as well in the context. So what's also fascinating is the same couple of introductory verses that we're just looking at, this initial encounter between Joseph and his brothers. It says that Joseph recalls the dreams that he had dreamed about them, and then says, "You're spies, you've come to see the land in its nakedness." And our medieval commentator, Rashi, says, well, what are these dreams that he had about the brothers? And Rashi and other Midrashic commentators say, he's remembering the dreams that he had as a young boy. He imagined that his brothers were bowing down to him. So I'm intrigued that when he's looking at his brothers, instead of Joseph immediately thinking about that moment when they threw him into the pit, when they ripped his cloak off of him, when they sold him into slavery, that's not immediately what he begins to think about in terms of his brothers, according to this Midrashic interpretation. He's thinking about something that happened a long time ago, back in the days of in the youth. So it has triggered, seeing his brothers has triggered in him, not the violence that they had done to him, but something from way long ago, deep in his youth, deep back, far before that moment in the family history. So this is, I want to suggest that at least what I saw there, what caught my attention reading it this year, is that this encounter somehow triggers and initiates some kind of process within Joseph that is disturbing, that is perplexing, that calls to mind not the moment of his injury, but the moment of his childhood. And he begins this process of re-experiencing, exploring, and eventually, as we'll see through this week and next week, eventually it will result in a reformulating of his understanding of what has happened all those years ago, and tries to recontextualize it and remember it. Okay. So this notion of memory is where I end up through this line of reading the Hebrew, trying to understand midrashically what's happening here in this moment. And so this notion about memory and trauma and injury and what that process is all about brought me to the attention of a therapist, David Eba. I was reading some material of his. And what was fascinating was not just the material, but to discover in the course of reading it that he has a practice a couple blocks from where I live. This is amazing. Okay. So this is on number 4 in the study sheet. What he wrote about memory and trauma, and he presents himself as a trauma recovery specialist. He writes, "We are constantly updating our memory. It is what we do our whole life. Memory reconsolidation alters our long-term memory. Our brains do that by recalling the memory into short-term memory. And then while that short-term memory is alive, we create a new neural pathway. So you build a different experience and quick response to that memory. The process of recalling memories into our short-term memory makes our memories unstable and subject to change until they are once again consolidated and placed once back again into our stable long-term memory. During this stage of recall at cellular level, certain neurons can literally grow new branch connections to other neurons. So because our memories are fragile and subject to alterations, memory can be edited and rebuilt so that healing happens." So this is a presentation on this reconstruction of memory that's coming from a therapist. And I was intrigued by it, and I started to pursue some more material about this, and I came across a lot of material that's in the National Institute of Health that's been produced by neuroscientists. And here's an article out of that literature called "Reconsolidation of Human Memory, Brain Mechanisms, and Clinical Relevance." Once memories are consolidated, they are not necessarily fixed, but can be changed long after storage. In particular, seemingly stable memories may re-enter an unstable state when they are retrieved, from which they must be restabilized during a process known as reconsolidation. So the neuroscience is now, in instance, affirming what our therapist is telling us about the capacity in a therapeutic setting to recall a memory and then to have the capacity to reframe that memory and then return it back to long-term memory in a different way, in a way that enables us to move forward in a more healthy, unburdened way into the future. This notion about what's happening here in the beginning with Joseph and his sense of estrangement is, in a sense, that is part of this process of what here are 21st century practitioners and scientists are calling destabilization of memory. And I want to suggest perhaps what Torah is revealing for us is this understanding of this capacity of estranging oneself from one's familiarity with not only with oneself and with what one has experienced in the past and how one remembers it. And that opens Joseph up to a new past and to a new memory of what that past was, which opens them up to a new present and to a new future. So my next source here is from the great Hasidic rabbi, Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. And Rabbi Nachman was someone who devoted a lot of his material to healing, and in particular, psychic, emotional, what we would call psychological healing. He himself was apparently subject to certain unstable mental conditions that was a great source of suffering for him. We think it may have been what today we call bipolar condition. And here he writes about memory and forgetting. A primal forgetting leads to a process of approximate reconstructions, but only if the seeker is genuinely the loser, if there's no unauthenticity in the search. Such a genuine awareness of loss is the only basis for hope of recovery. Rabbi Nachman is talking about the capacity to reformulate, to forget what he calls forget something that has burdened one, that has been a source of suffering in one's psyche, and to somehow leave that, to discard that and reconstitute memory so that one can live in a more unburdened and healthy way. I want to share with you this painting that I discovered. It's by an artist, Anne Stein. And Anne Stein is someone who grew up in Virginia. She's someone who grew up rooted in the countryside, rooted in a very stable family tradition. She grew up in the same household that her father grew up in with his father during the Great Depression. She's someone who is very rooted in the countryside and the fields that surrounded her home. And her love of nature caused her to be inspired her to become an artist of nature. And one of the things that she discovered is that nature, what she initially understood to be familiar fields all around her, consisted of organic life that moves, that its organic life is unstable, that organic life contains layers. And as she began to paint, she adopted two interesting styles to convey her experience of this material. Most of her art is abstract, and then much of her art is created with a method called encaustic painting. So what intrigues me about that is that abstract is a fairly new form of art. It's a form of art that develops in the mid-20th century. Encaustic as a way of creating art is one of the oldest. We know that it goes back to at least the 5th century BCE. So here she's combining something that's relatively modern with a very ancient technique. And that ancient technique allows her to create layers, because one puts on some material, then one puts wax on top of it, one heats the wax, it solidifies, and one creates more layers and more layers. So you create both a luminescence and you also create all these rich layers. So here, this painting is called Between Then and Becoming. And it's part of a series of paintings that she called Deep Memory, Mysteries Beneath the Surface. And all of them in this series are abstract encaustic paintings. And what she writes about the entire series is this. It says, all the pieces in this series speak to the layered, unstable, and ever-shifting nature of remembrance. They treat memory not as a fixed narrative, but as a living, fluid process, constantly reconstructed through acts of layering, erasing, obscuring, and revealing. And this painting in particular, Between Then and Becoming, she said what she wanted to achieve was the sense that she wanted to achieve the in-between space, where memory shifts and reshapes itself, moments that are caught mid-change, not quite past, not yet future. It's a reflection of how memory is not fixed, but is always moving, always becoming something new. So this notion about the capacity to reshape memory, I thought of in terms of Hanukkah. Because Hanukkah we think of as a clearly identifiable set of historical events that happen. The rabbis, the early rabbis, were of course aware of these events. They were aware that there were texts written about these events. The first book of Maccabees, the second book of Maccabees, and those books were not included in the Jewish Bible. It is almost as if the rabbis chose not to retain the memory of those events as they were depicted in those particular texts. And it is not until 600 years later, after these events, that there's some mention finally of what we call Hanukkah, which appears in the Talmud. And that's when we first get this story about oil lasting 8 days. That story about oil lasting 8 days does not appear in the primary texts that were written closer to the time of the events themselves. So it is fascinating to me that the rabbis, these early rabbis, are in a sense reconstructing for us what to remember about something that is called Hanukkah. They don't want to valorize the fighting, the taking up of weapons, the engaging of armed conflict. They want us to remember this divine intervention of oil that lasted not 1 day, but 8 days. And to emphasize this reframing of how to remember the significance of this holiday, they guide us to read on the Shabbat during Hanukkah from the prophet Zechariah, which has these verses. And it's a verse that occurs in Zechariah as someone is waking up. The character is waking up from a dream and a voice is talking to him, saying, "What do you remember?" And we get these words, "Not by might, not by power, but by my spirit." So in a sense, that becomes, if you will, a new memory about the source of our resilience. That's what, and it is a way to deal within the context, if you will, of what it meant to be Jewish in the year 600 CE, as opposed to what it meant to be Jewish in the year 145 BCE. At one point, the Jews had power, they had an army, they were a nation. In the year 600 CE, they were defeated, no army, dispersed, living under the sufferance of others. And so there is this, in order to live, if you will, in the context of its times, better to have a more adaptive memory, one that will allow us to live healthfully in this moment, is to have a different memory of what happens. And so I just want to perhaps cohere this, what I'm sharing with you, is to say what we're experiencing in Torah at this moment is this fracturing and shattering that is happening within Joseph himself. And it bears the possibility of a new hope, of a reconstitution of self, so that he can now live with a reconstitution, not only of himself, but of his whole family. So with that, I would love to know what you experienced, what you thought, what you felt, where your heart went in the course of reading this week's portion. Go ahead, Rose, please.
Oh, thank you, Rabbi. And Catherine's right there too. Um, well, I think that Joseph, when he sees this going on, when the brothers show up, he thinks this was my dream, so I kind of have to play it as it lays. I kind of have to fulfill the dream where the brothers bow down to me. And indeed, later on, the brothers say, your servant, our father. So kind of by uh, in that way, the father is bowing down to him as well. So, I think he said this was what my dream told me. This was the prophecy. So I kind of have to play it out. Um, and ultimately, he's going to turn it around, but he's going to toy with him a little bit, kind of in a performative sense, in other words, to make this play out. But I'm always interested in what Jacob says. Jacob always cracks me up, or Israel, he says, this always happens to me. He's like, he's kind of like a Mel Brooks character sometimes. He's like the 2,000-year-old man, like, this always happens to me. Why does this always happen to me? And then later, when he talks to Pharaoh and Joseph introduces him to Pharaoh, I guess in the next chapter, the end chapter, he just Pharaoh says, "Oh, how are you?" He says, "Oh, basically, ich habe ein bisschen Zorus, I just have all these problems." I mean, it's just a little bit of humor, I thought. But I think that that's what Joseph is doing, is saying, this is what the dream meant. We have to fulfill it.
Thank you. Thank you, Rose. And yes, let me call Catherine, and then we'll get to Jay. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was struck, first of all, by the sort of acts of deception. That first we have Jacob, who deceives his father, uh, passing himself as someone else. Then we have the brothers deceiving their father uh, with the garment. Then we have Joseph, uh, sort of dissembling this uh, uh, Egyptian kind of notable. And then I thought, what is happening in this process that disrupts this chain of events is that Joseph has been orienting himself as a soothsayer, orienting toward what will happen in the future. But his brother's visit makes him confront his past. And that is a difficult task. And it's not enough for him to do this individually. He has to engage his brothers in remembrance, and through his brothers, engage his father in some kind of remembrance. And the only way to remedy the situation is not just to restore himself to the family, but to make his brothers experience loss, a kind of, this missing Benjamin, first is going to be Simeon, then it's going to be um, Benjamin, and so on. And that he really needs to sense their devotion to brotherly love, I think.
Catherine, so first of all, uh, you that mentioned that Joseph is someone who's so far been oriented towards thinking about the future, and that's how he rose to power. And then the brothers come in, and it evokes for him a focus on the past. And what you got me to think about was the names that he gives to his children. That name means I've forgotten my homeland. And the other name means I've become fertile in the land of my affliction. So here is a character who says essentially, I've blotted out everything that happened before, and where I've become fruitful is in my suffering. And so now what you got me to think of, now he's being confronted in this dynamic where now he's no longer forgetting his past. He's now beginning to remember his past. And maybe that will enable him to become fertile, not just in his suffering, but allow him to become fertile within his recovery, within his well-being and health. So thank you very much for introducing all that material. Also, I just want to say, I was looking at the painting between then and becoming. And here's what I saw. I can just say what I saw. That at the bottom of the painting, we have these rich colors, blue and green, the colors of like water and growth and so forth. And then up towards the very top, we have some more ephemeral whites and so forth, but there's also all this blue at the very top, blue perhaps of sky and hope. And then in the middle, interestingly enough, there are these more mixture of colors, and then an orange. And then if you can see it, there's this little black, almost like an eye that's being outlined there. And what I thought was like a mask. And so in between this origin and then the aspiration, the future, there's this estrangement that's happening, this masking that's going on as part of the process. Anyway, that's fascinating about the painting. Anna, did you want to say something? Yeah.
First of all, I just wanted to note that you quoted chapter 41:7 and you meant 42:7.
Thank you.
On your text. And about the forgetting, one doesn't get to be 77 years old without having a few things in your life that you would rather not remember ever again. And I've been experimenting with that, about how the brain works. God gave us something up here, and I think there's a way to be in control of memory. And I've been trying it out here for a couple months. If I think of something that really causes me pain or anguish or embarrassment or sorrow or anything that one could call negative, I just say to myself, gone. I'm not thinking that again. That's not helpful. I don't even say that's not helpful. I just said, that's in my past. It comes up to, like, you know, it's buried way back. It comes up to the surface. I take a look at it, I go, mm-mm. And I think that you talked a lot about transforming a memory when it comes up, making it liquid, making it present, making it malleable, and then recreating. I think we also have the possibility to just put things out that are evil or not good and continue our life and not let the past clutter us up.
Thank you, Anne. Not let the past clutter us up. Lovely. All right, and let me call upon Jay, and then I'll call Richard here. Wait, Anna has one more? Okay.
Lo siento. Very sorry. One more thing about not letting the past clutter us up. If I recall correctly, in the culmination or the ending days of the story of Joseph and his brothers and his father dying, the brothers are really worried. Now dad's gone and he's going to come after us. We won't be safe here. He just behaved nicely toward us because dad was around. And at that point, Joseph gets to reassure him that no, it's forgotten. It's in the past.
Nice. Thank you. Okay, let me call upon Jay, then Richard and Robert as Jay.
Thank you, Robbie. Just briefly, I had not heard the word corn used in Egypt in a translation. So I did some searching while listening, and I found that corn in that regard meant to the corns of certain grains. In other words, it was a mixture of grains. Corn, as we know it, was Mesoamerican from this side. But on another note, it's interesting that the Haftarah, which is very short, is from Kings, and it's about Solomon. The first thing has the same first word, right? It's the same word as Miketz. Solomon woke from a dream, and then in that Haftorah is the famous parable of the two prostitutes that came saying, one baby died and the other one's alive and it's mine, and he produces the sword. So that's it. Just the nothing profound this week. Next week. Are we doing?
You did say something very profound, Jay, because
Are we doing it next week, by the way?
Yes.
Okay.
We mentioned the word corn, and in Hebrew, depending upon how one articulates those same letters, you can either say the word corn or the word hope. So one way, so when Jacob says there's corn, and corn is something that is ground up. It is something that it's the grain that is broken up.
It can't be eaten without grinding.
You got to grind it. And so if one were to say, Jacob is saying there's some kind of grinding that is available down there in Egypt that is the source of hope. Okay, go ahead. And then we'll get to Robert. Yeah.
I'll try to express my thought. It's hard, but I hear the talk about memory and so forth, and all this thing about time. One time you go back to an old time and say, well, maybe time really doesn't have any bearing. Maybe there is no such thing as time. That's a perspective. It takes an awful long time in, say, in developmental psychology or whatever, for the stages we go through. And if we snap our fingers and bring someone up through quantum, all the fractals get put together. And that's where our wholeness can come. And we struggle through our breathing. It's not just to forget or let it go, although that's welcome. It's about not being, it's the word signaled. Oh, that reminds me of this way back when, and I'm still angry about that. Even if that remains unconscious, we get triggered, as is the case with post-traumatic stress disorder. And some quietude, some breathing exercises, some body work reconfigures how that information is plugged in. So that stuff that's so-called in the background has not yet been processed. And there comes a time when something like that triggers that, and it stays in the unconscious and just works the crap out of you until somebody says, hey, exhale. And this human being, we have its whatever number of years you are and get to, well, you go through that process. And I think to think in terms of that time itself has no ontology, is not a real thing. It's a perfect perspective from which you look at what's happening. Not that it doesn't help to say, well, I was little back then and I'm bigger back now, so there's been some change, hasn't there? I'm still the same human being. So I think it's helpful to think about stages of growth, and that sometimes there's unfinished business, and you look back and just like Joseph says in here, he tells us, no problems. God planned this for this. We've learned a lot from this, and you're here and I love you. And that's what we're all about, is learning to love.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. And Robert, please share.
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you for another lovely evening. First of all, I want to thank Rose for the reminder of Mel Brooks. That just put a big smile And it still continues to make me smile because I'm thinking of him in certain roles. But I was very touched by what Anna said. And there are people who constantly look back, and it's debilitating.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wonder if we might look at how God created us and what is the purpose of Scripture. So if we look at how the body is, everything is designed to move forward. We don't stumble when we move forward. If we move backward, standing, sooner or later we will stumble. And we go very slowly and we don't end up anywhere new. When we look at creation, is there a parallel? Creation moves forward, season to season to season. It doesn't move backwards. It moves to new seasons, new fruits, etc. And then the Torah, what is the whole purpose of Torah or Baha'i scripture or the gospel if you're Christian? And of course, I was raised Christian. But what is the purpose of that? Is it to move backward or to move forward and to become better? And I think when we realize we are created to learn from our mistakes, and we must make mistakes. That's part of learning. Child must fall before it walks. It's the way it is. And I really appreciated what Anna said, not to stay there, to learn from it. I appreciate what was just said about learning. To learn from it, it's a quick thing, and then you move on. You know, Linda is a poet. The poet moves the pen. But if you leave it still too long, you get nowhere. You have to leave it still long enough to think, but then you move forward. You write lines, you write lines, you write lines. Once in a while, you stop and think. You write lines, you write lines. So, there's so much that comes out of these gatherings. Thank you so much. Yeah. That's it. And I wish all of you a happy Hanukkah. I'm a Baha'i. My holy days are a different time, but your holy days are my holy days too. So, I wish all of you the very, very most joyous Hanukkah.
Thank you.
You.
And just since you did bring us to this moment of poetry, just one word about poetry. One of the powers of poetry is that it takes words that each one by itself we may recognize and be familiar with. Poetry is a form of language that often reconstitutes those words into often unfamiliar partnerships or arrangements. And it is that unfamiliar set of arrangements that kind of causes us to sit up, pay attention, and ponder something different. We thought we knew what it meant when we strung a series of words together. But when we use those same words and we reconfigure them into a different rhythm or different actual physical structures, then it causes a way to reconsider what those words convey. And in a sense, that's what our medieval commentator Rashi was doing when he was looking at some of these words. Well, okay, we just could skip over the verse that says he recalling the dreams that he had about him. Oh yeah, he dreamed about his brothers. And instead Rashi says, well, which dreams? And so he takes the simple meaning of what's before us and then takes us into a completely different understanding, which was something was triggering Joseph to think about a long lost youth that was once sweet, that was once an intact family. And somehow there's something about that is causing Joseph to revisit that. It brings it forward. There's something that he wants to uh, resolve about all of that. And that's what this process is happening between over the course of this portion and the next portion. Anna has, yes.
in that process, it's about love. Joseph is clearing away. I mean, he's got the huge job to take a family and take all of the anger and the pain and the evilness and the hurtfulness out of it. He is clearing away the whole family so that everyone can be filled with love, which I think is the benefit of not holding dark thoughts in your own brain. You have more room for love.
More room for love. And we're going to see the kind of a climax of all that in next week's portion, that expansion of love. I want to share in the salutations that Robert offered us. I hope that everyone is able to experience during this moment in time, which sometimes can seem quite dark, and to remember our capacity to be sources of incandescence and luminescence. And it happens especially when we embrace one another, when we're not always on guard of one another. And so I'm honored to be part of this community, which creates that kind of environment that allows us to see one another in one's fullness and differentiation and differences, and to allows us to explore and share with one another. And so we in fact create our own menorah by lighting up one another and creating greater sources of lights. God bless you all. Look forward to seeing you next week. Be well, be well, be well. God bless. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Let the
Thank
lights
you.
go out.
Much love, friends.